Welcome to the Risk Reward Show. This week we have some head-exploding questions we're going to answer about third terms, stagflation, Middle East politics. Turns out Iran got a letter from a secret admirer recently. That was disclosed this week. And then we have that group chat. We get to talk about that. And then finally there's a new segment where we're going to be speculating on the prices of things like gold, Tesla, the euro, Disney stock, some other stuff. Stick around.
I want to start off the show with something that might make your head explode today.
Oh, fantastic.
In the last couple of days, President Trump has been asked questions about a potential third term. And he's been asked, are you considering that? And yesterday he said, I'm considering it, but I'm not ready to speak about it yet. I have something wildly speculative to put forth and a way he would be able to do it. And I want to ask your opinion of it, and I want to watch your head explode off your shoulders when you realize that I might be right. There's something called the 22nd Amendment in the Constitution. Let me read it to you, okay? It says, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice, and no person who has held the office or acted as president for more than 2 years of term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of president when this article was proposed by the Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president or acting as president during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of president or acting as president during the remainder of such term. Now that's section 1. The end of section 1, let me point out, was basically written for FDR to make sure that it didn't penalize him, I guess.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. Maybe that's the case.
That is.
Section 2. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified by an amendment to the Constitution by the legislators of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission to the states by the Congress. It did pass, okay? It is an amendment.
Right.
Officially, 22nd.
Right.
The United States Constitution. But I ask you this, it says nothing about Donald Trump running as vice president.
Right. Yeah. This kind of thing has been sort of theorized before. It would be, so what you're describing is the way Putin has managed to stay in power as well.
Yes.
For many years, he would juggle being prime minister or vice president or whatever over in Russia, while Magalov or whatever his name is, I can't remember his name, was, president. So basically, Putin's been pulling the strings in Russia constitutionally, more or less. I think they changed it over the last 8 years. I can't remember. But the first 10 or 12 years, he was doing that stuff. And there was nothing illegal about it. And I think we have a similar system. So theoretically, it's possible, but he still has to win the election. The other
Vance
thing...
or someone else would have to win the election, yes. Supposedly.
Correct. Right. Yeah, exactly. But the other thing is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but apparently their GOP, under Trump's orders, have been semi-quietly going around and getting ready they're starting the process wherein they could get a 3/4 majority of the states on board to change the Constitution.
I believe you're thinking about a constitutional convention.
Correct. Yes. So far, and they've been actively doing this. It was just reported the other day. So far, they think they have about 33 states on board who would change not only that amendment, but there's a couple others they're looking at as well, which is lovely.
Where has that been reported? Do you know?
I'll look it up and link it. I would have seen it in some mainstream publication.
It's very hard to pull off, by the way.
Of course. And they're not going to get enough blue states to get the full 44 or however many, 42 or however many they need. But it remains to be seen. But the fact that they're trying tells you something.
So what do you make of this? Do you think that Trump would actually try to run as vice president? What would you put the odds on this particular wager at this current date if he's not able to pull off a constitutional convention?
I would say the odds are good for him doing that because, I mean, this is a man who is facing, he has, 34 felony convictions. He has several others that are pending, but as long as he's in office, they can't get him. He knows that, and so I think he'll do anything that he possibly can to hold on to power until.
Well, I'm not sure that's why he would do it. I think it would be more about ego. I
Yeah,
think
that too.
if he didn't get elected or decided not to run in the capacity of vice president with the intent to lead from behind the curtain, I believe that he would nevertheless still be an older man. And I don't think he'd be worried about these felony charges or anything else. I think he believes he'll win in a court of law. Having said that, I find this intriguing. I find it scary and working against the vein of democracy as we know it in many regards.
Yeah.
I think that this is basically a move done by authoritarians, and I would be disappointed, greatly disappointed, if they tried this out. And I think it would cost them poorly because
Would
if
you
they
be
didn't win,
surprised?
there
Would you
would
be
be a
surprised?
massive backlash.
Yeah, there would be. But would you be
Okay.
surprised if he did it? Because I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'd be surprised if he doesn't do it, quite frankly.
I would still be surprised. I think that there would be enough people to say, no, this is not a good idea. I would hope so. How old would Trump be at the end of this? Will he be at the end of this term? 85?
Yeah, I mean, he was 78, maybe 82. I don't know. I think he's old. He'd be older than Biden at the end of his term. And according to Trump, you know, at that age, you shouldn't be running.
Okay.
He's breaking his
Well,
own rule.
I didn't see your head explode from your body. Maybe you had thought about this to a certain extent before. So I apologize
I
to
hadn't
the
thought about the
audience for
vice.
the lack of pyrotechnics.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to record a little longer here. Scott said it didn't explode. Like I said, nothing surprises me anymore. And you know, every day we're hearing stuff about him or Steve Bannon or some other toady who just like says, "No, we're working on it. He'll have a third term." So I know they're getting creative with this stuff.
What is the definition of toady, by the way,
That's a good
in
question.
slang?
I don't know where it came from, but toady is sort of
Yeah.
like a lapdog, a lackey. All these old terms nobody uses
Is it
today.
a new usage or something old that I'm just not
I think
familiar
it's
with?
something old. I don't know where that word came from. I don't even use that word, but here we are, showing our
Hmm.
age, I guess. No, I think that was like from my grandparents' generation. Toady. That's a good
Yeah.
question, though. I wonder where it came from.
All right. I believe you have a question for me now.
Well, dude, I do actually have a question. It's a financial question. I want to get your opinion on because this has been popping up in the press lately.
Mm.
Looking at all the, especially with the tariffs, we're 2 or 3 days away from the new 25% tariff on all automobiles being imported to the country and various other tariffs. We'll see if that happens or not.
They're calling it Liberation Day, apparently.
Liberation Day, yes. So that's affecting the
My.
markets, and it's also there's a lot of we well at least I when we were talking about this at election time, I was saying
Mm,
we were both wondering what the tariffs might bring. So now
mm,
we're seeing it play out. So now there's been a lot of talk about possible recession.
mm.
Now I'm starting to see a lot of talk about stagflation, which would be bad. That we haven't seen that since the 70s, and at that point we hadn't seen it since the 1930s during the Great Depression. One of the reasons you and I were not fans of Jimmy Carter's presidency, one of the many reasons, is because he presided over this stagflation, didn't know what to do about it. He just, he just sort of just talked about it.
So,
There's nothing happening. So here we
so,
are.
so, Congressman Summer, what is your question?
My question is, do you think we have stagflation coming? Some of the financial signs are popping up, and I can list them for you if you like.
Well, do you want me to give you an answer first?
Yes, I do. What do you think?
I think we've been in stagflation for about 2 years, actually. I think
Okay.
if the United States government under Biden hadn't spent so much money putting stimulus into the economy, actually, since, and in many respects, you can argue this, since 2000 in the financial crisis, if
Hmm.
so much stimulus had not gone into the American economy, the GDP would have been much lower and the inflation rate would have always been right around what the GDP was, particularly over the last few years after coronavirus and the implications economically.
Yeah.
I think that under Trump, if these tariffs are applied, sanctions, levies, whatever you want to call them, I don't think it's going to help the the U.S. economy right away. I know Barry Crawford last week said that he believes that they are, I don't want to say a good idea, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he believes that Trump is on the right path regarding these tariffs. And I mentioned that it was a way to counteract against cheap labor in other places like China, India, Mexico, Vietnam, wherever. However, I don't, stagflation, everyone will want to stay away from this word. It's semantics. It will become basically a war of propaganda. And it's something via a definition that you really can't prove, except to say that if there is a lack of solid growth and inflation is still running high, yes, it is stagflation. And this is something I've been writing about actually for a couple of years. And central banks are to blame for this too, because they haven't been proactive. And sometimes you have to actually have policy that takes a little bit of a chance. It doesn't mean you should gamble with the economy. The Treasury, though, has to maintain debt. That's the key to all this. Milton Friedman always spoke about one thing: inflation comes from debt. It comes from too much government spending.
So just to back up for a moment,
I didn't really
because
answer your question by saying yes or
I need
no.
to. That's okay. I need to. I realize that there might be some listeners who don't know what stagflation is. It's a word that basically means stagnant growth that's mixed with elevated inflation. And because both of those are starting to pop up on radar screens, we're starting to see the word thrown around a little bit more. There's a real-time estimate of GDP published by the Atlanta Fed is now pointing to economic activity shrinking at an 0.5 rate in quarter one, which ends today, quarter one.
Let's point out that's not under Trump. That's not under Trump's
hold on,
guardianship.
hold on. Meanwhile, the
Thank
inflation
you.
measure favored by the Fed has risen to at a 4.1 annual rate, 4.1% in the first 2 months of 2025, which is the
You're
highest.
talking about the PC.
Which is the highest in a year, and so that helps explain why there was a steep sell-off on Friday. The S&P 500.
You're
Is now
talking about the personal
9%.
consumption
9%.
expenditures
Boy,
data.
I gotta keep repeating myself when you interrupt me. The
Thank
S&P
you, Mr.
500 is now
Congressman.
9% below its February 19th high. So these are all data points that we need to keep an eye on and see where they're going, because at some point, people are going to be wondering, well, where do I need to park my cash right now if this is what's on the horizon? The more people talk about this, the more it's reported, the more it can become a self-determining end.
Yeah, self-fulfilling fantasies.
Prophecy. Right.
I
So,
use fantasy.
Fantasy, yes. Either way,
Yeah.
I feel
By
like
the
we're in a
way,
fantasy world.
gold is at the futures right now. Do you want to take a guess? The
I haven't
futures
looked.
contract.
I haven't looked. I'll say, is it over 3,000?
150.
Wow, that's quite a
Spot
jump
is
since
around
the last time we talked about
$25
this.
less, showing people are really speculating on higher prices. As I've basically predicted, I spoke to someone that I know in the investment world today who told me his target for gold is $3,500 an ounce midterm.
Wouldn't surprise me. When does he think that that'll happen?
It'll happen tonight at 12:01.
Tonight?
It's a joke. It's a joke. Come on. I mean, he's not crazy enough to give me the exact day. No one's going to
No, I'm
say
just
that.
saying, does he think it'll happen this year? Or in
He
the
said
foreseeable
midterm.
future?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
believes that it'll happen
Oh,
this
yeah. Okay.
this year. Midterm is 3 to 6 months,
Yeah.
or 4 months or 5 months, depending on when it happens. And he says, "See, I told you so."
Right. Right.
Yeah. As Matthew McConaughey famously said, "It's all Fugazi,
What movie
all
was that from?
Fugazi." From Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah. That was a good movie. I think that Marty Scorsese has a future in directing.
He directed that. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He apparently
Interesting.
is. I haven't seen this show yet. It just dropped on Apple TV, I think a week ago, but it's the new Seth Rogen show called The Studio. It's supposed to be fantastic. There's 2 episodes on so far and getting great reviews. And Martin Scorsese, there's like tons of like cameos for celebrities and directors and others that come and go in this thing. And Martin Scorsese appeared in the first episode. Again, I haven't seen it yet, but it was supposed to be really funny.